Okay. All right, we're live now. So hello, everyone online. My name is David Nadel with Blue Feather, and this is the Atlanta FileMaker Developers Group. Let's go around and do introductions with everybody who's here. Again, I'm David Nadel.
Earl Cook.
I'm Junior at 360 Works.
Christy, Mac Advantage. Hi, I'm Laura.
John Green, United Acceptance Incorporated.
Erica Kidd.
All right, and our speaker today is Doug Gardner, and I'm going to hand this over to you. And
okay.
We're up to you. There you go. Take it away.
David, thank you very much for inviting me tonight. I'm going to try to move quickly. I have no idea what the level of what the skill level is of the people that are in the room, or at least I have very little idea what the skill level of the people in the room is. But I want to say this: there's a way in which I'm hoping that everything that I talk about tonight is maybe a little bit of review and sort of filling in holes. I deal with a whole bunch of developers, and they're all exceptional in one way or another. They're all especially good at one thing or another, but it's very surprising some of the holes that they'll have in their FileMaker knowledge, just because they haven't they've never come across certain types of problems, or they're not aware. Maybe they're very good programmers in other languages and they spend a lot of time in them, but they haven't really spent as much time in FileMaker, or they weren't aware that something was possible in FileMaker, or they weren't aware of a behavior that FileMaker had that that makes a difference to the way that you can program in FileMaker. And so I'm hoping that not a lot of what I'm going to talk about tonight is going to be new to people, but I also hope that people's holes will get filled in. This is kind of a fill in the holes fundamentals session. So we're going to go through a bunch of basic things, some of which I'm sure that you know, and hopefully there'll be one or two little nuggets in there that'll make you go, oh yeah. So let's get started. First of all, who am I? Well, my name's Doug Gardner. My company is Exoteric, and we're in Toronto. We're a FileMaker Platinum partner. We've got clients all across Canada and the United States, and we've been developing FileMaker databases for a long time, for over 20 years now. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time talking about me because we've got a lot of things to cover and probably not a lot of time. First of all, is 8 o'clock a hard stop?
No. So
okay. But
some people might need to get going around then, but you know, if we're going, we can continue.
Okay.
Let's choose. Yep.
Okay, and you can cut me off anytime, or just unplug the cable, and I'll finish whenever I need to finish, and you guys can go home whenever you need to go home. Let's just let me just cover a couple things really quickly. First of all, I am trying to start a discussion. This is not words coming down from an authority. This is more like us all talking together, and people can bring things up. I don't know. Are there any people that are watching the live stream?
Yes.
Yeah.
And do they have a way of asking questions?
Yes.
And will I see those questions?
I don't know. I'll ask them for you.
You ask them for them, and let me know what's going on. Let me also know what's going on in the room. I actually can't see the room when I'm showing my Keynote, because it takes over both of my screens. So so you can let me know what's going on there, and I'll rely on you to sort of guide things, David.
Yeah, we're a rowdy bunch. We'll ask questions too.
Good. Just speak up. I'm not going to go over what I'm going to go over. I'm just going to get started. So let's go into FileMaker, and I'm going to open up a really simple database, and just to get the discussion started. And I'm going to start off with something so basic that it's hopefully not going to be that interesting. In fact, I'm hoping that a whole bunch of things in what I'm talking about today are not that interesting, and that will make those few little gems stand out just that much more. So I'm going to go in here. Now, I don't know, when I scroll or when I zoom, can you tell that I've just zoomed in on a portion of my screen?
No, the assistance zooming.
Right. Pardon?
The assistance tool zooming does not show.
Right. Okay. That's what I figured. So I just didn't know if Hangouts was any different, but that's okay. I'll just zoom this way, and there'll be a couple of points where it might be a little bit difficult to see. I don't know. Are you on a big screen there?
Yeah, we got a projector. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So here's a really simple relationship graph, and let me just ask a question, at least of the people in the room. Everyone there has created relationships in FileMaker before. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. So it's not going to surprise you when I do something like this and I just create a relationship between companies and contacts based on something that's called a company number. And then I click OK. Then I go into layout mode. And then I draw a portal. And I show some contacts within that company. Let me just show, let me just see here. Okay, so I'm just going to show the first name, the last name, and maybe the email address here. And go into browse mode, and we can see those items for this company. And just so that you can see, it's kind of like a cooking show. A bunch of things have been done in advance here so that we can just get going. So we've already got related records for the company and the contacts area. Now, the very first thing I guess that we should say about the relationship graph is that nothing that we're not looking at any tables in here, right? The tables are created over here in the table area. And on the relationship graph, what we have are like pointers back to the table. So a single table occurrence can be represented multiple times. That is, we can have multiple representations of that table on the graph. Again, it's probably nothing that's surprising there. But because of this, the graph can start to become complicated fairly quickly. And we're going to talk a little bit later about ways of keeping the graph simple and preventing it from getting difficult as we try to, as our project gets bigger. I'm skipping through my notes here because there are a whole bunch of things that I want to be able to cover. And I think for this group, it's not going to make sense to do to cover some of the more basic things. So let's just talk for a second about how when we created our relationship here, we obviously had key fields in here, and there's a foreign key, which is over here in the contacts area. And then there's a primary key over here in the company area. And the primary key is unique to each of the records that are in that table. And the foreign key obviously can be shared by multiple records in that foreign table. Let's just talk a bit about what constitutes a good relational key. Somebody help me.
Must be unique.
So it's got to be unique. So how about an email address?
No.
Okay, why not? I mean, if let's suppose a contact had an email address, and that email address isn't shared by any other contacts within that company or within that group or within that data set, why wouldn't an email address be a good relational key?
Because if it gets changed or updated, it'll break all the relationships.
Okay, so the relational key, we don't want it to refer to anything in the real world, ideally. It's something that stands on its own and has no other purpose than to uniquely identify the record. Now, in FileMaker, we know that we can create relational keys in two different ways, right? We can go in and we can auto-enter serial numbers, and FileMaker will just give us the next serial number. Suppose that we are creating a solution that's going to be deployed out in the field on iPads, and we're actually going to have copies of this solution on multiple iPads out in the field, and people creating records out in the field. How do we ensure that when they all come back, when those records all come back to the main database that's on a FileMaker server somewhere, that there aren't collisions amongst those key fields?
Use an index based on GUIDs.
So what does that mean?
Auto-enter the data in your index using get UUID.
Right. So okay. So that's a great way to do it. So we can have a calculated value in here using get UUID. And well, what is a UUID? Well, it's a universally unique identifier. And these have been around in FileMaker since FileMaker 12. It's a 16-byte, 128-bit string. It's what does that mean? It's like 36 characters long, and we can have that auto-enter when a record gets created. So instead of a serial number, have a UUID created. One important thing that we always want to do when we're creating our relational keys is make sure we have checked off prohibit modification of value during data entry. Otherwise, it's possible to inadvertently go into one of our key fields and edit the value that's in it, and that would be a bummer. Okay. Let's talk a little bit, let's go back to the graph for a second and talk a little bit about the way that FileMaker relates data. So if we open up, we've got a relationship here, we can open up and look at how that relationship is formed. We can see that on the left side, we have the company table. On the right side, we have the contacts table. And the positioning, the left and the right side, is in fact entirely arbitrary. So right now the company's on the left side, but watch this. If I just move company to the right side in the relationship graph, then open back up, well, now we see that contact is on the left side, company's on the right side. So there's nothing special about the direction or about where these are placed or how they're represented in our edit relationship window. Now, does that mean that the left side and the right side in a relationship are the same? Well, let's talk about, let me show you a couple things and see what you think. So right now we've got companies related to contacts based on a company number. And that means that I should be able to go into a layout that's based on the contact table, like this one. I'm going to view it in form mode, and just going to go in and I'm going to display the related data from the company that's related to this contact. So we can see here that we've got our company name. And if I flip through some records, you'll see the company name change because we've got different contacts related to different companies in the database. So it sort of looks like our relationship works in both ways, right? Where when we're in the company area, we're able to look through and see related contacts. When we're in the contact area, we're able to look back through the relationship and see related companies. So it might seem as though there's no directionality in a relationship, but that's not true. both sides in the relationship aren't really equal. One side of the relationship can be viewed as containing find criteria, and the other side of the relationship can be viewed as displaying results of that find. And so the interesting thing here, of course, is that, well, first of all, we're likening relationships in FileMaker to performing a find in FileMaker. And in fact, it's a very useful way of thinking about things across the board. But some very interesting things follow from this. So the field that's on the find side of the relationship, it doesn't need to have an index. It could be a value that's got global storage, or a value that's calculated based on related data. But over on the results side of the relationship, the values over on that side do need to be indexed. Now, why? Why is it that on the results side of our relationship, so if we're here in the company area, and our find is, let's say, the company number, and we're looking through to contacts that share that same company number, why is it that the contacts need to be, or the company number on the contact side needs to be indexed? Anybody?
Because otherwise it'd be incredibly slow.
It would be incredibly slow. And in fact, so incredibly slow that FileMaker, a design decision inside of FileMaker, the engineers decided, no, we're not going to allow relationships in which the find side or the results side of the relationship is not indexed. So let's just go in and try this. So I'm going to go in to the company area, and I'm going to take my company number, and we can see it's indexed. I'm going to turn the indexing off for this. So I'm going to say indexing none. I'm going to turn off automatically create indexes as needed. I'm going to say okay, and then we're going to just take a look at what happens. Well, guess what? The contact info is still in there. But if we go back to the contacts area, and so now we're looking through the relationship in the other direction, right? From contacts back into companies. Look at that. We can't see the company anymore because we've just turned off the company number index. Similarly, if we went into the contacts area and we turned off the index for the company number, well, we would get no results. So really interesting thing then is that this side of the relationship, on the find side of the relationship, we could use global storage, which can't be indexed. We could use a calculation field that could use related data that can't be indexed. But on the results side, we absolutely have to have indexing turned on. I'm just going to quickly turn indexing back on. Go into the contacts area and turn it back on there. Okay. So let's just talk for a second about how indexing works inside of FileMaker. FileMaker's index is like a book's index, right? Imagine that we had Bertrand Russell's History of Western Philosophy, and it's about 800 pages, maybe 1,000 pages long, and it's really small type. It's a dense book. Suppose that we wanted to find all the spots inside of that book where we had, let's say where they talked about, what's a good one? Let's say justice, the concept of justice. Well, one way that you could do it, or maybe epistemology, that's even better one. That would show up throughout the book. One way to find all the spots in the book where the word epistemology is used, or the idea or discussion of epistemology occurs, is to start at the beginning of the book and start reading, and have a pencil in your hand and be writing down each time you find an instance of the word epistemology in the book, write down the page number. And that would take a long time because it's a long book. But another way of doing it is to have someone, when the book's being written, go through and do the exact same thing, but store that for you in the back of the book. And then you can just flip to the back of the book into the index, look for the word epistemology, and see each of the pages on which the word epistemology occurs. FileMaker is, in effect, writing down all of the instances of that company number, let's say, and storing them in the back of the book. Only the back of the book is an index that is hidden from us inside of FileMaker. And so when we need something quickly, it's able to flip to the back of the book and display the results quickly. So it's I think, a good way of thinking about what an index is in FileMaker. But it doesn't tell us everything about indexes in FileMaker. And let's just get really quickly into a little bit finer point. What does it mean in the indexing area where we've got indexing, none, minimal, and all? Well, interesting question. Does anybody know? Can anybody tell us in a succinct way what none, minimal, and all means?
So there's a difference between no indexing, word indexing, and entire field value indexing.
Yes, although you're so on it, but you're not exactly right, because it's not necessarily entire field indexing. So let's say we've got two basic types of fields that can be indexed. We've got number fields and we've got text fields. Number fields can only either have an index or not have an index. And that's why right now we're looking at the storage options for the company number field, and that field type is number. And that's why our options are none or all. It's super misleading that it's labeled in this way, none and all, because really it's either on or off. When you've got a number field, the index is built, I think it's on the first, or on 400 digits. So your index can be up to 400 digits long in that field. But if we went to a text field, let's just go here, and now we can see we've got none, minimal, and all. And here's my little tiny bit of equivocation. In a text field, of course, the indexing could be none. It could be turned off completely. If we turn off this automatically create indexes as needed, then we're preventing FileMaker from automatically creating an index for us. So if we, say, performed a find on this field for the first time and we had automatically create indexes as needed, FileMaker would have to start reading at the beginning of the book and read every single page and make note of all the instances of whatever it was you were searching for, what records that appeared in. But once it had done that, it would be storing it in an index, and it would switch to either minimal or all over here. In fact, it would be switching, in this case, initially to minimal. Let me just explain so minimal means that FileMaker is creating, at the very least, either a word index or a value index. And so the difference between the word and the value index, as you said, was that a value index is, well, it's the first 110 or so characters that appear in a field. So if your field is a paragraph or a book, FileMaker will still take the first 110 characters and use that as a value index so that you could create relationships with other records or with other fields that had shared the same, say, 110 characters at the beginning of the field. That my equivocation was that it's not taking all the all of the values in the field in order to, or all of the characters in the field in order to make the index. There's a cutoff, because otherwise your index could be huge. The other type of index is a word index, and that's for searching for a specific words inside of a field. So you know how we can perform a find on suppose we've got a text block in our data and we're looking for a particular word. Well, we can search across all the records in our database, and then FileMaker can just find records that have that word inside of that field. So the value index is the first 110 characters taken as a block, as a whole. The word index is any words anywhere inside of that field will get indexed. Any questions, comments, criticisms about my explanation? The reason that it's none, minimal, and all is because minimal tells you that FileMaker has created one of the two possible indexes, but it does not tell you which one. And it will create, if I said something misleading earlier, if you created a find on a field, on a text field, and for a particular word, then it would say minimal in here, and it would not have created a value index. It would have created a word index. A word index is an index of every single word, as I said, that's inside that field. If you created a relationship, well, then FileMaker needs a value. So it would have created a value index. And if you have both performed a find and created a relationship, then it will say all, meaning it's created both types. There's no way, unfortunately, of looking at this and knowing which of the two types, if it says minimal, which of the two types it's created, which is kind of goofy, but well, God love them. This part of FileMaker was constructed in the 1940s, and it hasn't been updated ever since, strangely.
I have a question.
Yeah, sure.
So what is the difference in a text field between all and a minimal word index, which would just be what, every word in the text field? So are those basically the same then? All and minimal for a word index would be identical?
No, well, minimal just means it's created one of the two types of indexes.
Right, so if it creates a word index in a text field, what's the difference between minimal and all in that indexing?
All tells you that it's created both types of indexes. Minimal tells you that it's created one out of two types of indexes. So either the word or the value index.
I gotcha. Okay.
So that's all. That's what that means. And as I said, it is kind of confusing. And that's why I thought it was worth talking about for a couple of minutes. Okay. One other thing that I want to talk about really quickly in the relationship graph is when we go in here, I don't know how well you can see this, but down at the bottom, first of all, we can create relationships in this table via this relationship. So of course, what that means when we select that is the FileMaker now creates a sort of a phantom row down here. And when we type something in there, it fulfills the requirements of the relationship. So our relationship, if we could see our relational keys here, we would be able to see that FileMaker has actually put the company number into a field. And let me just do this so we can see. Hopefully that will work. Yeah, so FileMaker. So if I now put in a new one here, FileMaker puts the company number in and fulfills the requirements of the relationship in order to display the data. So it's auto-entering that related value for you. So that's, I think that everybody knows that. That's pretty common way of using FileMaker. And then the other side of that, of course, is that we can say, we can put a check in this checkbox, delete related records in this table when a record is deleted in the other table. That sounds almost like a word puzzle, which is unfortunate because you're doing something here that's potentially dangerous. And you are, of course, telling FileMaker that when you delete this parent record, this company record, also delete any of the related contact records. So by deleting one, you're deleting all, and that's called a cascading delete. And people use that in different ways. Sometimes they'll create special relationships just for cascading deletes so that they can manage them. I actually normally turn cascading deletes off. If I were going to allow someone to delete a record, then I would probably handle it with a script rather than allowing them to go up and use the records menu and choose delete record, because I'd want to control whether they were allowed to do it, and I'd want to control what got cleaned up as they were doing it. And having cascading deletes turned off can sometimes save your bacon, because if you do have a database where, you know, for whatever reason, the powers that be inside of that organization want their employees to be able to go up and choose delete from the menu, having some breadcrumbs left behind is not necessarily a bad thing. It can sometimes allow you to put data back together. And so I think it's a safer thing to leave cascading deletes off unless you really know you need it. And sometimes you really do need it. So it's certainly a good thing that it's there. The other thing I want to talk about is sort records, which is the very last button here. So before I talk about it, let's just look. So we can see our contacts are sorted. Well, does anybody know how they're being displayed right now?
Creation order if they're not sorted.
Right, they're just showing in the order in which they've been created. So we can go into our relationship graph and we can click sort records, and we're going to sort by first name. And when we do that and click OK, sure enough, our sort order changes and we are now sorting based on the first name. Now, if we go into layout mode, we double click and we say sort portal records. Now, and we sort instead on last name. Well, now we've got a conflict, right? Because we're sorting in the relationship based on the first name. Now we're going to try to sort on the last name. What's going to happen?
Last name.
It's going to sort by last name?
Yeah.
Okay. And who thinks FileMaker is going to crash? Anybody? No, it's not going to crash, obviously. And you're absolutely right that when you sort a portal, it then sorts based on the it sorts based on the portal sorting rather than on the relationship sorting. Well, what's the difference? Why do we have these two types of things? Anyone want to explain it in a nutshell, what the difference is?
In this case, the sort is the same based on the related records.
Sorry, say that again?
In this case, sorting by first name and last name resulted in the same sequence.
Oh, it did?
Yep.
Let me see if that's true. No, that's false.
Oh, okay.
No, I changed one. I didn't really look through it that closely. Although I think I can tell that, well, maybe. So, but let's make it so that it's not the same, which is what I've just done. I just changed one of the last names, and now it's really not the same. So, so what's the difference between these two methods of sorting?
So sorting the portal is just a visual for the layout that you're on.
Yeah.
And the relationship will affect every occurrence that tries to look through that relationship, including calculations.
Okay, good. So let's do this. I'm going to pull the first fields out, and I'm going to set them, I'm just going to duplicate them. I'm going to put them up above like this. So now I'm going to go back. Well, first of all, I'm going to turn off all sorting for a second. We're just going to talk about what it is we're viewing. I'm going to go in here. I'm going to turn off this sort. Okay. So now we're viewing the records without any sorting turned on, which means we're viewing them in their creation order. So this is sort of the natural way in which the way in which they were created. There's no load on FileMaker to display things in this way other than just fulfilling the requirements of the relationship and pulling up. So in other words, performing the find and displaying these records. If we go in here and we sort based on last name in the portal, well, notice that the record that I pulled out, it's still the first record that I had in my database, but we're showing things displayed in a different way just in this portal. So the first record in the creation order is still being displayed when we pull it out. That's a useful thing to know. It's very useful to know that you can pull fields out of a relationship, and if you're not showing them in a portal, you'll see the first instance of that item in the relationship. Well, let's do this. I'm gonna turn off the portal sorting for a second. I'm gonna go back into the relationship graph, and now I'm gonna sort through the relationship. And when I sort through the relationship, okay, based on first name, an interesting thing happens. Notice that now it's showing my first record as being the first record in the sort. So the relationship is we're no longer displaying records in the order in which they were created. Now we're displaying records in the order in which we've decided to sort them in the relationship. And this has significance. So if we've got a script that is for some reason needs to operate with the first record in that relationship, we're getting a different result now than we were before. And if we go in here and we sort with our portal, again, we are going to override the sort in the relationship, but it's just for the purposes of this portal. It's got nothing to do with what FileMaker now considers to be the first record to display. Why do we have these two different methods of sorting, and what are the costs? Well, I think it's apparent that by being able to sort the relationship, we can affect the order in which things display, which means we can affect the order in which we deal with the with values that are being shown through a relationship. So if we've got, say, a script that's looping through, we can control the order in which it's going to loop through the items, let's say, in that portal via that relationship. Now, what's the cost of doing this? Well, the cost is that FileMaker has to perform this sort every single time it displays data based on that relationship. So it's got to display the sort in order to show us Billy right here, which we pulled out of our which is a field based on the relationship, and it's got to sort in order to show us the results in this portal as well, even when we have sorting turned off. So that can be kind of expensive on your database, because that means as you flip through records, FileMaker is sorting. If we have a large number of related records, FileMaker is, first of all, it's not just sorting, it's finding, then sorting, finding, then sorting, finding, then sorting. And so if you're wondering, why is this getting slower and slower? Well, that's why, because you're giving FileMaker two different tasks that it has to perform. And its sorting is very similar to performing sorting through a relationship is very similar to sorting when you just go up and choose sort records. So it can be costly. You can sort based on fields that need to be calculated, based on unstored fields. Those are some really good ways to slow down your database. So you've got multiple options for slowing your database down at this point, and it's good to be aware of them and why they are the way they are. Anybody want to say anything else about any of this? Okay. I'm going to, I think I'm going to skip way ahead. No, you know what? There are a couple things I'm going to talk about really quickly. First of all, I'm going to talk about multi-predicate joins because I think that that's worthwhile. So here in this database, we've got quotes, and quotes can have line items, and we've got a table that's got products in it. We want to be able to assign those products to a quote. And we also have in here companies, and these companies, the companies are associated with the quotes, and we can display a quote history with those companies. Let's just set things up so that we can display our quote history based on filtering through using two different fields here to filter dates. So what I'm going to do is go back into the relationship graph, and I'm going to relate companies to quotes based on the company number. And I'm just going to go in here. I'm going to hook this up. So bear with me. Talk amongst yourselves. I'm going to almost there. We're in the home stretch. And we'll show the salesperson. That'll be it. Okay. So right now we're looking at a bunch of quotes for this company, a whole bunch more for this company. And if you look at the dates up here with our start date and our end date, you'll notice that actually this has no bearing at all on what's being displayed right now, because all we're doing is saying, hey, when the company number here equals the company number in the quote, display the quotes down here at the bottom. Well, let's make it so our filters work now. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in and we're going to choose some additional criteria. And this is called a multi-predicate join. We're going to add predicates to this join. And we're going to do that by using the different types of operators that we have over here. So we've got company equal to company number. So from our quotes to our company table. Or actually, hang on, I'm going to do this I'm going to move that like that so that it's less confusing for me. So, okay, so companies on the left side. So that's all that I did there. So now we're going to say, okay, so our date quote. Okay, date quote. And I'm going to say, so this is the date on which this was coded. And then I'm going to say that when it's greater than or equal to the date that's in our history date start field. So I'm going to go in here. I'm going to find one that's called history date start. And there it is. So I'm going to say add. And now, so we're saying anything that's greater than or equal to this date, display. We also want to tell it when to stop displaying, because we want it to display from a certain date to a certain date. So to do that, we're going to say, okay, date quote. We've got another field here called date history date end. We're going to change the direction of our operator. So now it's when the date quote is less than or equal to the date end. We're going to add that as a predicate. So now we've got when the company number equals the company number, and when this is greater than the date that we've set in our history portal, and this is less than the date that's set in our, or did I say history portal? In our history date start field, and this is less than the date that's in our history date end field, then display those results. And when we do that, we'll see that now we're able to filter through the relationship. Now, This is a pretty cool thing that you can do. And you could do the same sort of thing with portal filtering. And when you're doing it with portal filtering, as was said earlier, you're just doing it for the one portal you're viewing. The reason that you would want to do it in the relationship graph is this: you wanted some sort of permanence when you're moving from one area to another inside of the database. So when you're still within the context of that relationship, you'll be able to grab these results regardless of whether you can see them on screen or not. So if you wanted to use the list function, for instance, to return this set of key fields, you could do that based on this relationship without having any portal being displayed at all, just by having a start date and an end date set, for instance. Let's look at one other one. I'm going to go into the quote area now. And suppose we want to show all of the quotes that are related to this one particular.
Hey, Doug?
Yeah.
And you would want to use global variables for those dates so that multiple users could be defining the relationship based on their.
Excellent point. So this is a great example of a case where, in order to use this in a multi-user environment, you would absolutely want this to be, well, I'm not going to say absolutely, but I'm going to say you would likely want to use global values in these fields. Why am I saying not absolutely? Well, because there are certain cases where you are highly unlikely to be to have a conflict, and using globals for these fields has implications that are difficult to code around. So, for instance, if you flip from one record to another, you would maybe want to be displaying different results. You can't do that easily in a simple way if it's a global value. So you've got to look at your use case. You have to decide, is it the case that people are going to be using the same record at the same time? If there's a likelihood of that, then you absolutely need to code for that likelihood. And if there isn't, then there's some advantages in not doing that. So can be a really interesting conversation just around that very point. But I'm glad that you brought that up. So let's suppose we want to show other quotes for this same customer. So here's the customer's name right here. There's the company number. We want to be able to show other quotes for this customer. Well, let's just go into our graph and do that quickly. So we've got company, we've got quotes. I'm going to duplicate my quote table occurrence, and I'm going to call it quote. Well, I'm just going to call it quote 2 for right now. I'm going to change the name in a second. And I'm going to say, okay, so when the company number here matches the company number there. So in other words, whoops, I'm sorry. No, what I want to do here is show, I'm going to show other quotes for this company. So I'm going to show when my company number here equals my company number over in quote 2, display those results. So we'll go in here. I'm just gonna really quick. I'm just gonna delete this because it's a faster way of creating it. And I'm gonna go like this. I'm gonna go like that. I'm gonna connect it to quote 2. Go like that. And so now I'm gonna add my quote number, my salesperson, and my date, quote, good. Okay, and so now we see our results, but look at what we've called it. We've called it other quotes for this customer. So how do we display the other quotes for this customer? Well, there's our quote number right there. And we're displaying that quote number in our portal. Well, we want to show all the quotes except for this quote. So how do we do that? Well, who can tell me how we do that?
not equal to the same primary key for the quote ID.
Yeah, you're totally on it. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in here and we're going to say, okay, when the company equals the company from quote to quote 2, that's good. That's our base set. But then we're going to exclude something from that. We're going to say when the quote number, but only display them when the quote number does not equal quote number. Like this. So I'm going to say, so now we've got 2 predicates, right?
Yeah.
And we're the first one's giving us, think of it as the basic found set. And the second one is putting a limitation on that and saying, except for this case right here. So when we do that, we'll see, sure enough, quote number 2 is no longer being displayed in here. It's just showing the remainders. So let's move quickly on to one final thing. Suppose in our quote lines, we wanted to be able to add products. Well, one way that we can do that is by creating, I'm just going to make a duplicate of that. I'm going to call it product underscore So what's the So one of the things that we can do is we could create a calculation field on the quote side and make that calculation equal to 1. And we could create a calculation over on the product side and we could make that calculation equal to 1. And then we could join those 2 together. And that way, in the quotes, we would always be able to see a list of all of our products.
Or
what's the better way to do that?
Or Cartesian join.
Cartesian join, exactly. So the is Cartesian join. So let's just look at how we're going to construct our relationship right now. For a Cartesian join, we knew that's what the X symbol right here means. It means Cartesian join. And somebody tell me then what a Cartesian join is.
In all cases. In any case.
It means
something.
Yep, go ahead.
Anything to anything. So there has to be something on the side. As long as there's something there, it'll match. So anything other than nothing will match.
If by nothing you mean a value in a field, that's actually not correct. You actually don't need to have a value in a field in order for a Cartesian join to display a result. So if we said, let's take something that we know we're not going to have. So customer terms right here, customer terms to product number. I'm going to change it to that. I'm going to say okay.
Sorry, on the right side. On the right side, I think you need to have something there.
Well, it doesn't matter actually. Is where I'm heading with this. So I'm going to, there we go. I'm going to show through that relationship. I'm going to show the quote number, and I'm going to show the product number. And I'm going to show the description. Okay, so it's showing up. Are we even displaying on here? No, so we're not even displaying right now the terms, but let's display the terms, customer terms. And surprisingly, no term is entered, and still we get results over on the other side. And in fact, if on the other side we were connecting to something that has nothing in it, it would still match. Anything on this side matches anything on that side. All values are a match. And I have to tell you, it's kind of surprising how often I come across developers not recognizing that this is a very useful and powerful tool. You could then use this in conjunction with something like get nth record to be able to pull values out of a table in the order in which they were entered, or you could sort that, and then you could pull them out in a known order based on whatever it was you were sorting on. So some interesting and kind of cool things that you can do there. Any questions?
So you'd be guaranteed not to inadvertently miss something. That's a good point. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And it's a time when you never want to use cascading delete.
Exactly. Yeah. Insanely dangerous in that case. In general, I'm just nervous about having a delete be blind for some reason and hardwire it in so that it happens no matter what. When you delete a record in one table, you're deleting records in another table. It's a risky thing. It's a kind of thing where, you know, maybe even if the end users are shielded from it, you as a developer could make a mistake at some point, or another developer that wasn't aware could make a mistake at some point. It's kind of a risky thing to have them around. So you really have to use that judiciously. Are we out of time?
It's about 8. It's probably getting good to wrap up soon.
Okay, so we're gonna go into the lightning round then. I'm gonna show a few things really quickly. I'm gonna jump like way the heck through my slides. Hang on, I've got my navigator up on the side so that I can see what slides to jump through to. I didn't talk about the many-to-many problem because I think people know that you solve that with a join table, and I think that's all pretty clear to people. I was going to talk about FileMaker's relational structure and how context works. Okay, let me ask you, do I have 5 minutes or do I have 10 minutes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to take 10 minutes, and I'm going to really quickly talk about FileMaker's organizational structure and just how we can think about things in with respect to context. So I'm going to open up another database here. Oh, I already have it open. I don't know why I've got it open twice, but anyway, okay, here we go. And inside of here, I want to get a subtotal. So I've got a calculation field here, and it's for this subtotal. And what I'm going to do is I want to total these amounts right here and display them down here. Well, that's pretty darn simple and straightforward, right? So I'm going to go into my fields. I'm going to find, there's my subtotal field, and I'm going to create my calculation. And I know it's hard to see, or it might be hard to see, but up at the top it says evaluate this calculation from the context of. And when we click on that, we've got like all these different options. And the question is, well, which one do we choose? What is the correct context? And the only good answer to this is we don't know. No matter how long you've been around the FileMaker block, you can't tell with the information we've got so far. You have to interrogate this database a little bit. And in order to do that, we need to look at what layout that we're sitting on. And so we're sitting on, it says table, but obviously that's wrong. FileMaker should really be calling this table occurrence. The table occurrence is called QOT. So when we look at our relationship graph, and we see that, oh, okay, we're sitting on this table occurrence right now. From the vantage point of this table occurrence, what are we able to see? And the answer is, well, we can see these things over here. We're using who knows what type of graph we're using here. What relationship style we're using. Yeah, it's Anchor Buoy. Yeah, it's Anchor Buoy. And who uses Anchor Buoy? Anybody in the room?
Lots of people.
Yeah.
Sure.
Just about everybody. So, okay, in that case, I'm not going to argue for it too strongly, and I'm not even going to spend too much time on it. The one and only thing that I want to say about it is, well, I'm going to give a mild defense of Anchor Buoy because it's been maligned in the past, and I think that that's unfortunate. A friend of mine and a brilliant guy, Ray Colligan, wrote a paper quite a long time ago now, in which he goes through different styles of constructing relationships in the relationship graph. And he's sort of a little bit weak on anchor buoy. And there's a little bit of hand waving as to why it seems like maybe at the time that it's not as efficient. I think that the main argument against it is that it's not efficient, because you can have the same relationship represented more than once, and you are maybe constructing a relationship to show going from left to right, and another relationship somewhere else in your graph going from right to left, and that seems kind of redundant and unnecessary. But what you get in return for that is a real clarity and simplicity. So what is anchor buoy? The notion is that each table, each layout rather, is sitting on top of a table occurrence in the relationship graph, and your main interface layouts are all sitting on table occurrences that are designed for a particular function inside of the database. So when we're in the quote area of the database, we're sitting on the quote table occurrence. When we're in the company area of the database, we're sitting on the company table occurrence. When we're in the product area of the database, we're sitting on the product table occurrence. And when I say we're sitting on, I mean the layouts that we've got are sitting on those table occurrences. Now, given what I've just said, I'm going to ask you a question. I'm going to open up a file here, and this is my what's wrong file. I want you to look at this. I want you to tell me, help me troubleshoot this and figure out what the heck is wrong. So inside of this file, it's showing that we've found 0 records. I'm going to open it up. I'm going to show you the tables. So in here, we've got a table. The table's got one field in it, and that field's got 8,000 records. So there are 8,000 records in this database, and yet it's showing us that there are 0 records in our found set here. We're showing 0 records. Why? What's wrong with this file?
The layout is not based on a table occurrence for that table.
Exactly. So if we go and we take a look at our relationship graph, there are no table occurrences in the relationship graph. And so we've got to add a table occurrence to the relationship graph. So I'm just going to do that here. And there we go. There's our table occurrence. And now when we go back and we connect that layout to that table occurrence, and we connect the field to a field with the field holder to a field inside there. There we go. So now we're displaying all 8,000 records in there. So the purpose of this is just to emphasize that layouts are intimately tied to table occurrences on the relationship graph. Without that connection, we aren't able to display data, and we aren't able to establish one of the 2 dimensions of context, which is what set of records is it that we're working with. In fact, let me go back to here and flip through to, well, I'm going to show it in a little bit different way. So FileMaker's organizational structure, one way of thinking about it is that we start with a file. Inside of a file, we've got tables, and then inside of tables, we have fields. Well, another way of looking at the exact same thing is that inside of a file, we've got tables, and tables have table occurrences, and table occurrences have layouts and scripts and calculations. So scripts and calculations are dependent on which layout you're on, or where you are, or which table occurrence that you're on. So that's where our relational structure lies, on these table occurrences. So as I said, there are two contexts to dimension. And the first context is, what set of data am I working with in the current table? And some found set dependent script steps. Think of delete record, delete found records, replace field contents, sorting, omitting records, omitting multiple. That's all part of answering the question, what set of records am I working with? Well, the second context of dimension asks the question, from the standpoint of a given record on a given layout, which is sitting on a given table occurrence, what related data can I see? And when we think about it in that way, and we come back to here, and we know that we are sitting, that our layout here that's being displayed is sitting on this table occurrence right here, then the question is, what data can I see? In other words, and the answer is, well, this is the data that we can see. And how do we see it? Well, we see it through the filter of the intervening relationships. So if I'm sitting on a layout that's sitting on this quote table occurrence, and I look through that quote table occurrence, I can see companies that are related based on the company number, and I can see contacts that are related based on that same company number. Which contacts am I seeing? I'm seeing contacts through the filter of companies that are related to that quote. Let's just go and take a look at that over here. So right now, here's our company. Okay, it's 10,003, it's Exoteric Inc., it's my company. Here are all the contacts that are related to that company, to my company, displaying down here at the bottom. And if I perform a find, well, I'm gonna go to another quote that's based on another company, and this one's based on, this company's ABC Inc. Notice that there is a contact here named Bill Zinga. Well, notice that in the Exoteric company, there's a contact named Bill McDonald. Now I'm going to perform a find based on this field for the word Bill. What are my results going to be? Am I going to find all quotes that have a contact in them named Bill?
Yes.
Yes.
No, just the ones for this contact.
Just for that customer.
It's already filled.
Right.
Only bills for this customer,
Oh, okay.
Oh.
right?
So
What is?
right now, we're displaying
Yeah.
all of the companies, or rather, we're searching through the relationship, and we're looking at all quotes in the database. We're not searching, we're not specifying any particular quote when we perform this find, right? We just entered find mode. And so we're able to search through that relationship and find all companies that have an employee named Bill in them. But when I'm on a given quote, for instance, this one quote, the only contacts I'm seeing are those 1, 2, 3, 4 contacts that share my same company number. So I'm looking through the relationship, and I'm only seeing these 4 contacts. So I'm looking through from here, through the filter based on company number, into the contacts area. So we can think of it like this. We're sitting on top of a mountain. From the vantage point of this mountain, what can we see? We can see all of these things off in the distance, and we're seeing these things through the filter of the intervening relationships. And that's a good way of thinking about it when you are doing your FileMaker certification and you've got the crazy example of, say, students and classes and instructors, and you're looking at them connected in different ways on a single relationship graph. Who in the group's got FileMaker certification?
I think a number of people here. Yeah.
Yeah, most people. Yeah. It's definitely worth doing. It doesn't really tell you whether someone's a good developer, but it does ensure that your developers have a breadth of knowledge in FileMaker and are aware of different things. One really important thing I think as a developer is not always remembering every single element within FileMaker, but just knowing what's possible. And if you know that something's possible, then you can plan around that and you can dig in when you need it and explore, determine what the what the behaviors are in that area, and decide how you're going to incorporate them into your solution. Just knowing what's possible makes a big difference. So, okay, I'm going to just talk for a second then about this anchor buoy graph that we've got here.
I think we got to wrap it up here. I think people need to get going.
Okay. Okay. That's great then. I will say thank you very much. And if anybody wants to reach me, you can contact me here, doug@exoteric.ca.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much.
All right. Okay. Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
Thanks.